Good morning, everybody. This is Tony Jones with Rebel Financial. I'm filling in for Phil today as he is traveling for spring break with his family. And today I'm joined by Suzi Vincent of two companies, Vincent Branding and Media Mouse Inc. And I'm going to let Suzi get into more of what she does. But basically, our subject today is branding and how important it is to get it right for a company and some of the branding mistakes that happen to folks if they're not doing things right, and some of the catastrophes that may happen from that. So let's just start making this real general. When we're saying branding, what are we talking about when a company's thinking about branding?
Well, what we're talking about first is that your clients need to be able to recognize you, and usually that starts with a logo. And so what you want to do is give a lot of thought to your logo, and regarding colors, and how simple or complicated the design is, because you're going to be using it on a lot of different substrates, from printing to promotional products. And so you want to give a lot of thought to your logo, because that's where the branding starts.
Okay. I had read that in the top, every year there's contests for who has the best logos, that blue is like an overwhelming color. Ours is purple. Anybody who's been here would know that. So
that's excitement.
It's
blue
excitement.
Is calming.
Yeah. It's royalty too,
yes.
as we learned afterwards. That's not why we chose it, but so it works that way. But also, branding it, I think about it, if I'm looking for something quickly on the street and I see a 7-Eleven, I'm more likely, because of that logo, to go there than I might be to just a mom and pop place. Not that it really matters, but it really, the emotion that's attached to some of this that we're not even thinking about can be really significant.
It is. That's the whole thing behind using branding and getting your logo out everywhere. People who recognize just even the colors. For instance, Baskin-Robbins pink. I mean, when you see that, you know exactly what you're dealing with, and so it's very important.
Right. So, I think our president loves McDonald's, right? So how
yes.
much those M's, how much
yes.
those M's matter.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And so you tell me when you've come, you're working with a new company, right? And they want to get something set up, right? They want to make that impression. What would you give me some steps as to how you might work with them and how it works?
Yeah, the first thing that we would talk about is I would learn a little bit about their business, what their clientele is. It depends on the demographics of your audience, what sort of colors you use, what sort of style of art you use. We would talk about basically simplicity of the logo. If you're on a budget, makes a difference if you use one color or if you use 4 colors and all sorts of fancy effects in your logo. So you want to keep that in mind. Then we would talk about various ways that you can market your company, get your name out there through printed material, through social media, through your website, and through promotional products.
Right, and doing that. And I know, as we talked about earlier, promotional products can be, a lot of people it's commodity, right?
Yes.
And you have to distinguish yourself somehow. I'd imagine it's a very tough business, so coming up with the right logo.
Yes.
And as you said too, then once you have that right logo, 30 years ago, you didn't have to worry about that logo, but at your building, maybe on your product, your boxes. But today, all the social media, it's on Facebook, your website, of course, all these different places that we have to have that right, so you have to be thinking about that.
Yes, and I think that's where I have an advantage. I have a background in graphic design, owned a commercial printing company, so I know how logos are used on various types of products or printing or the website. All of them take different kinds of files, and to be able to prepare that file properly so it looks good on whatever product you're using is very important.
Yeah. So real quick, we'll digress here as I want to show some pictures. So hold on, JB. Let me, here's a comparison of, if we could see that, I'll expand it here. McDonald's and Mercedes, just through the years, how these have evolved, right? And so we're so used to the golden arches. And at times it gets to, I forget what it used to look like. Now all these look familiar. I hope we can see those pretty clearly. But if you think about Mercedes, they all still seem familiar,
Yes.
but they evolve and maybe get sharper with time. So that's one example. It's another, which I thought was a little bit funny, because I didn't even realize Apple's first logo, I always thought it was kind of this rainbow apple, and it got cleaner and sharper looking as it went on. But to see this first one here, featuring, as it says, Isaac Newton under a fabled apple tree, I have no recollection of that one. So, and I actually thought still this was a current one, but that went away in 2000, and I believe that this information is right. I'm not even positive if this is, I got conflicting information, the current one. But you could see also how important it is. Have you worked with companies at all to make changes to their current logos and such?
Yes, and usually what happens is we simplify the logo. Instead of having all the money, for instance, that Apple had when they made the rainbow logo, most places don't have that kind of a budget, and so we simplify the logo. Anything you do, the more colors it has, the more detail it has, the more expensive it will be to use, and actually not as recognizable as something very simple and clean like the M, the golden arches for McDonald's.
Yeah, well, and it's, the times change too, right?
Yes,
I mean, so
yes.
what worked for some companies do not work for others. So, and what works for some times does not work for others. So, I thought what was interesting too, we talked about some of the big mistakes that have been
Yes.
made. So the one that is always comes to my mind first would be Nova, right?
Yes.
The car, the Nova, in Spanish, which is a big amount of their clients, it's no-go, right?
Nova.
Nova, right? Nobody thought that through, right?
Right.
And so, also this soda from Ghana, if you, JB showed a screen here, P Cola. I have no idea what P means in Ghana, but here it probably didn't go over so well, right? I mean, I don't think I'd be drinking it. I'm sure it's a very fine soda. So it's not just about it's about. It's just avoiding catastrophes too,
Yes,
and that's
yes.
not always easy.
Yes, and it takes a long time to think about all of the things that might happen, what they mean in different cultures, especially because we're a very diverse culture, and so we have to pay attention to that.
Yeah, who is it going? Who's going to be offended? Who's going to be hurt?
Right, right.
So, but I started on the evolution. I wanted to show that because it is important to evolve, and it goes to show how times have changed and how much you need to stay on top of your marketing.
Yes, and things have gotten simpler and simpler. So
yeah, and because you're
as
right.
you go
Look
through
at
there.
the Pepsi. Because I guess this is the one right here. These are some. I don't even really remember this one, but the other ones look so familiar to me. But when we see those colors, we know
Yes,
Pepsi,
exactly.
right? I mean,
Exactly.
when you don't have to have the word Pepsi on a can to know you're getting a Pepsi. Same with
Right.
Coke.
And it's very important too that they are very consistent in using the same color. It's not just a red. There are probably 500 reds. And that's why there are specifics. They're called Pantone matching system colors, and you want to keep that consistent.
Right. So I bet anybody who they're dealing with that produces any kind of label knows exactly what that number is.
Exactly. And many companies have their own special mix. For instance, the Baskin-Robbins pink, it's a special mix.
Okay, so only they can use
Yes.
that. Nobody else can use that. Yeah, sure. I mean, and there are just so many colors out there.
Yes.
So I don't know if I had one more to show you. I did want to show you, just to delve a little bit more into your business, of course. So why you would want to talk to Suzi is as you're developing your business, you're going to want to, you guys do graphic designs on the website, right?
Yes,
and that
yes.
is a very important part into tying that into the brand and the logo.
Yes.
Right? Because you're going to have it different.
Everything should be consistent.
Yeah. And then when you carry over to the promotional products, that as well is going to have, the proper logos and
That's
things like
correct.
that. So one of my pet peeves, I don't know where we were. We were at a brewery here in town. And they were selling their T-shirts for like $25, and to me, it's like keep your name out there as much as you can.
Yes.
So I think people need to realize that is more important than a little bit of profit on whatever promotional item they might have, right?
Yes, they have to pay attention to what kind of business they have, And the t-shirts, the hats, they're all kind of billboard advertising. Everybody sees them, rather than a pen that you hand to somebody and then they put it in their pocket. So
Right.
that's the kind of thing you need to think about when you're picking your promotional products.
Right. Do you see, I mean, we could leave with this, any trends, I mean, that have, you've been doing this a while.
Yeah.
Like any big major trends that seem to be happening now that weren't happening 10 or 20 years ago? I mean, it's social media, of course.
Yeah, the social media, and I think with respect to printed material, collateral material, digital printing has brought about the fact that you don't have to print 5,000 or 10,000 of anything. It's on-demand printing. Things change quickly. Maybe your marketing message has to change quickly. And so with digital printing, you can do smaller quantities. You can get them very quickly. And so it's a very good tool to use.
Yeah, and it was, right? I mean, 20 years ago, it just wasn't that way.
Oh, no. You would pay a big price for a very small quantity, which is why people bought large quantities, 5,000, 10,000 of something.
Yeah.
And then maybe, I don't know, 6 months later, there would be a change in their plan or something, and they would throw those away and start over again.
Yeah.
And that's no longer the case.
Okay. So one last thing, too, is as we really have evolved with social media, the internet and such, what about going kind of old school and doing mailings and things like that? I mean, do you do much of that these days?
Yes, and there are some new ways to do that mailing. There's something called Every Door Direct Mail, where for probably less than $1, which includes postage, mailing, printing, and everything, you can send a postcard, actually a large one, like up to like 9 by 11, and the postman just delivers it to every door in his route, the carrier's route.
Okay.
And it's a very, very inexpensive way
To
your
get
message
done.
out.
Old school.
And yeah, old school and saturated air.
Right.
There's something particular going on, like an event or something of that sort.
Okay, well, good. Well, listen, thank you.
You're welcome,
It's been
thank
nice.
you.
You're welcome. And so, next week, Phil is expected back, and he will be talking to Elaine Ewer of Helping Hands in the Garden. So, join us next week at the same time. In the meantime, have a great holiday weekend. Thanks for joining us.